Oh, man.
Jeff Bezos.
Oh, yeah, Jeff Bezos. Man.
How crazy is the National Enquirer allegedly, we should say allegedly.
I believe.
Allegedly.
I don't want to get sued.
Tried to extort him. And it's about the Jamal Khashoggi investigation from the Washington Post. It's all connected to that.
I read a bit about it. I started reading more when Ronan Farrow came out and claimed that they went to him too. So I'm not as versed. Like I haven't read. I read through
they meaning the Enquirer.
The Enquirer. Yeah, Ronan Farrow. It was a story. I think it was from The Week, where Ronan Farrow says that they approached him and put pressure on him as well. Wow. But you know the interesting thing is, when I read that story, I kind of laughed because I was like, remember Gawker?
Yeah.
Remember when they outed Peter Thiel and then
yes,
Hulk Hogan? Like, these people are really brave to go up against billionaires like this and try and drag them.
Yeah.
I'll also point out it's kind of scary that you live in a world where a billionaire can destroy your company because they're angry at you. But
it's also kind of scary that they can use this to extort him so that he takes the Washington Post, or they were attempting to get him to take the Washington Post and remove a legitimate news story about an actual murder.
I don't trust the Washington Post, but, that's an aside.
That is an aside.
Yeah. Like, if...
I get it.
When I look at what the National Enquirer did, it just reminds me of what the media does. Mm-hmm. They know what they can do, and they know how to do it. The media is influence, it's power. Brands, they're scared. They're scared. So you look at what happens with some of these Twitter accounts that will lead campaigns where they encourage all their followers to send emails. It's not the same as blackmail, by no means. But when there's an attack vector, like, what is that, Wild Sardines Company, they don't want to deal with a brigade from activists. You tweet at them, your fans tweet at them, and they immediately cancel on your show and they disavow you unless you do something, unless you say something, unless you disavow something. So granted, it's leaps and bounds worse when a National Enquirer allegedly, tries to extort Jeff Bezos. But the craziest thing about it is allegedly, that the investigator, I think his name is Becker, was entertaining the possibility that a government entity intercepted the texts, the nude selfies from Bezos. But I did see another journalist tweet that they're not entertaining that. They're not pursuing it. It was just a thought, so maybe it's not real.
Well, part of the other thought was that his girlfriend's brother, who's a Trump supporter, might have somehow or another got screen grabs of her phone.
It was really interesting when Bezos said because he owns the Post, people presume he's their enemy.
Yeah.
And that's another point I would bring up too when it comes to like banning Alex Jones. Just because someone's reporting something doesn't mean they're advocating for it. But sometimes they are. It's like you got to understand the nuance in that.
Yeah.
But I mean, Bezos is probably not the person you'd want to target. Could you imagine what would happen if Bezos showed up at the Washington Post and said, guys, kill the story?
Jesus
Every journalist would tweet it.
Yeah.
Bezos showed up and just killed our story.
Yeah, it's almost impossible. It's so unrealistic. But maybe there's more to it. I mean, the real, and this is the big conspiracy theory, was that, Trump always calls him Jeff Bozo.
Right.
Someone from that side is involved in this.
Yeah.
And, because Trump's always had this relationship with the Enquirer. That's the big conspiracy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I don't know. I guess this is a relatively new story, and I've been, here, so I don't know as much about it as I probably should.
Which just shows you how crazy digital media is. I mean, digital things, like sending things through the air, and it's just, and that people can get intercepted.
That's why... when I mentioned earlier the potential for civil war, like we don't know what it could look like. This could be it. It could be special interests using information. It's the information war, things that people have talked about. I was thinking about this a while ago. It's like, man, why did people shoot each other 100 years ago? I mean, still do, but like, World War II, why were they running it? Because they wanted to gain control. They wanted to centralize power, or they wanted to, push an ideology or a government or expand their power. You don't need to shoot somebody to do that. You just need to convince them you're right. Or you need to get them to fight each other. So I think it's fair to say, the Russians are absolutely screwing with us. But we've learned through, if you trust the reporting, and it's hard to know what's real or not, that the Russian campaigns were not only promoting Trump supporters, but they were promoting Black Lives Matter. Why? To get them to fight.
Well, they weren't just doing that. There's a fantastic podcast that Sam Harris released recently with this woman. Let me get her name so I can... see if you can find it, Jamie. It's called The Information War. That's the name of the podcast. But they were doing all sorts of different things, like not just trying to...
Renee DiResta.
And I'm working on getting her down here soon. that they also had like Texas culture. They had trans rights. They had they even organized Facebook campaigns where they had a pro-Texas group and a pro-Muslim group meet across the street from each other.
Yep.
I mean, they're sowing seeds of dissent, like organizing it.
And I think I'd be willing to entertain the possibility that what we call the culture war today was seeded specifically by special interests, potentially Russia. Nothing you can do about it. It's done. You know, when people adopt an ideology, you can't easily break that. And some people refuse to cross that divide, you know?
Yeah, but it's just so funny how many different ways they were attacking this. They had a Blue Lives Matter groups and Black Lives Matter groups, and they put people at odds with each other. And one of the big ones that they did was they targeted African Americans and were trying to get them to vote for anyone other than Hillary. And this is like an engineered campaign that Jill Stein's our vote. And like, we can't vote for Hillary. Like, Hillary does not support us. We can't vote for Hillary. And they made it very tribal.
The first thing we have to assume is that it was effective. Yes. And that what we view in the culture war was exacerbated by these campaigns. We don't know to what extent they had an influence over the U.S., but I will say I think it's fair to point out they play a role, and then we can see what happens. Charlottesville. Yeah. You know, where we can see the dramatic escalation, where you end up with some crazy guy associated with, you know, white nationalism ramming a car into a bunch of protesters. Yeah. It's, you know, people get riled up to a point. There's a really great video called This Video Will Make You Angry by CGP Grey, where he talks about how these groups, they argue amongst each other, not against each other. They make each other angry by posting images of the other. You know, there's certain subreddits where I don't want to, you know, start a brigade, but they'll post memes nonstop attacking a particular politician. They're not arguing with the left or the right. They're arguing to themselves about what's wrong with the other. And so these groups grow and get angrier and angrier, and then when they finally meet in the real world, you get extreme violence. So it's very possible to seed those communities and rile people up, push these things.